What is something about yourself that sounds totally made up, but is 100% real? I died first, and then was born. I've told this story a few times on Reddit, but I enjoy telling it, so here we go again. During the cesarean to bring me into the world, there was some major complication on my mother's end. She started bleeding internally, drowning me in the womb. When I was removed, the doctors tried to get me breathing but couldn't. I was declared dead. My mother was still unconscious, but my dad was brought in to say goodbye to me. He held me in his arms, was saying goodbye when out of nowhere I started coughing up blood and screaming as babies do. Apparently it was the weirdest moment in his life, being abjectly terrified and overwhelmed with joy that I was alive. It's my favorite story to tell, because weirdly it takes some pressures off on birthdays. I don't do well with too much attention by family/friends, but celebrating my death day doesn't bring people the same connotations. I grew up on the wrong side of the river, was considered by all to be the town loser, and went to work as a janitor while still in high school. Then, in my 40s I set a goal for myself, while still working full time, to take one class at a time until I either graduate or die, whichever comes first. At age 49 I finished my Bachelor's of Science degree, at age 52 my MBA, and age 61 my PhD. Never let the arrogant elitists define who you are, or what you can be. I never graduated high school, but I have a bachelor's degree. I was homeschooled and my mom never went through the legal steps to actually get me a real diploma, so she made one in Photoshop that was then used to get me into this podunk community college that didn't verify it. From there I got my associate's degree, which I then used to get into a decent university, where I got my bachelor's. My great-grandma ran a brothel back at the turn of the 20th century. She was Algonquin and people were pretty racist back then, so she had a hard time getting business. Since it was a coastal town, Maine, she bought up a couple leaky old row boats and would load them up with hookers and booze and row them out to the ships at night. When ships came in to port, most of the crew would get shore leave and hit the bars and brothels in town, but they always had to leave a few sailors on the ship to keep an eye on it. My great-grandmother figured those guys had money too and probably felt left out. She basically set up water-based lot lizards, or ubahos. My grandpa and his sisters grew up in the brothel and no one would talk to them or socialize with them. My grandpa met my grandma picking green beans for a local farmer. They fell in love. When they wanted to get married they had to leave the state to get away from her family that were utterly disgusted that she would marry the son of a whore. So they ran off to Detroit because GM was hiring, and that's how my family came to Michigan. I was at a store when Tony Hawk was signing autographs. I was only 10 at the time and was a huge fan. One of his early video games had just come out. The store had a couple TVs on the wall and some video games to play. Being a kid I waited for one controller to open up and someone leave. A kid ended up leaving, and I grabbed the controller and started playing and minding my own business. A couple minutes later the store wanted to grab photos of Tony playing his own video game. He came over and grabbed the second controller and began to play multiplayer with me. Probably played for 10 minutes. The bonus was it was also my 10th birthday, so I played Tony Hawk Pro Skater with Tony Hawk. Edit. Wow, I made this comment and didn't return to Reddit until just now. Was not expecting it to be that big of a hit. Thank you. I do not have photos of myself playing the game with him, but I believe my parents have a couple of photos of me with him and getting his autograph. I still have the signboard on my wall. Spooky. Anyone who was there at the time will remember 3 things that might not be obvious to anyone who wasn't. 1. The smell. Everything smelt of burning for a full week. 2. The F-16s in the air and law enforcement with automatic rifles everywhere. 3. The missing posters. The last of these I will never forget. It was heartbreaking. Every available surface was covered in missing posters. It brings a lump to my throat thinking about it even now. Once in college I applied for a job at the library help desk. I figured I would help people find books. Didn't give it much more thought than that. During the interview, I aced all of the customer service questions. Then they asked me whether I knew how to defrag a hard drive. Cue alarm bells in my head, but I kept calm outwardly and said no, but you can teach me. I worked in it for 3 years by accident. They were too nice to fire me. I came home and laughed about it to my mom. Went to a friend's house and got home around 8 p.m. When I got home, my mom was waiting for me. My mom had a stack of pictures on the foot of my bed and told me that's your real father. Lol. So that's how I found out. I was actually okay with it. The person I thought was my father was already kind of a loser deadbeat. Turns out my dad was also a loser deadbeat. No loss, I guess. Would have been awesome if my dad would have turned out to be a decent human being. So, tragic story, not a happy ending. At least I can look back and laugh. Kind of a funny way to find out. My dad kidnapped me and took me to Singapore for very malicious purposes. I'm sure you could imagine. I was 15 and my dad literally had fake documents and suitcases filled with random clothes. When we got there we went to a sketchy hotel, and after 15 minutes he went to the bar. A bit after that, some guy just walks in. I was confused, but he began muttering saying I was too pale and too old, and he left. I called my dad, but he didn't answer, so I climbed out through the window and went to the police. They put me on a plane home that same hour. I don't really tell people because it's a bit of a crazy story and sounds made up, hence why it's here, but yeah. My husband, I'm 30, has been my best friend since I was 7. He was the new kid at school and I walked up to him and said, "We are going to be best friends." He said, "No we aren't. Leave me alone." I bugged him every day for 2 weeks before he finally said, "If I'll be your friend, will you shut up about it?" We were married 20 years later. Proved his ass wrong. I once won a $500 raffle during a routine visit to my local tea shop. It was the building's annual Black Friday event and there were 5 baskets with varying amounts of goods, services, and coupons. I needed tea, so my only stop was the tea shop. It cost me $20 to fill my tins, but they said raffle tickets were given out after a $25 purchase. I said fuck it and got a hot tea for me, and the woman in line behind me entered with that one ticket. I got a call a few days later saying I won the top prize basket. When I went to claim, they asked about my purchases. I told them, and they said the drawings had over 1,000 tickets and many people had over a dozen entries. The raffle prize included $25 to the tea shop. I once won an expensive blanket in a raffle at work. The raffle was for charity and they bugged me to enter, so I bought one $1 ticket, while all the older work ladies bought 5 or 10, because they really wanted the blanket. I was the only person at the department store who only bought one ticket. This was in the early 90s, and I was only making $4.10 an hour, 20 to 25 hours a week, and that dollar came out of my gas money. The day of the drawing I sat in the break room, and as I passed by the blanket I thought, I better not forget to take that home tonight. I snorted in disbelief at the silly thought, and went off to do work. A couple hours later I was informed that I had won the blanket, and yes, I was freaked out, and yes, I remembered to take it home. My great-great-grandfather was a Pinkerton detective, acted on vaudeville, and had 5 wives in 2 different states that knew nothing of each other. He also slightly changed his last name each time, and never got caught until Ancestry website happened. Lol. Sounds a bit like my great-grandfather. He had a wife in France, and then 2 in the US in neighboring counties. He was caught though. My great-grandmother was wife #2. She found out about wife #3 and divorced him. No one knew about the first wife in France until I pulled his service records from WWI. My brother is 31, I'm 19, and when he was born his grandmother, we don't share the same father, bought him a Northeasts. My mother, not knowing what to do with it, turned it on and played Super Mario Bros. She spent 2 months every day trying to beat the game, even buying a strategy guide to go through it. She beat the game and never touched a video game again. I lost my heel in a lawnmower accident. Edit. Here's a story I was 4 at the time, and I won't say who exactly did it, but he was mowing, and it was a riding mower and the hitch on the back where you can hook a little trailer. I loved to stand on that part and ride. Well, this time I saw a frog in the grass, and being the 4-year-old I was at the time, I jumped off the mower and onto the grass and put my hands over the frog to catch it, and he didn't realize I had jumped off, and he backed up. I cannot see 3D effects in movies or games. I didn't know that until a friend showed me his new Nintendo 3DS, and I asked him whether this thing was a scam because it didn't look any different to me than a normal DS. We had a fight over this because we both thought the other one was bullshitting him. You're holding it wrong. How the fuck do you not see this? Are you fucking kidding me right now? There's nothing 3D about this thing. Same. I always thought it had to do with being colorblind when I was younger, since they use the colored lenses. Years later I had my vision checked where they used two images, one for either eye, to check depth perception, and I failed miserably. How's your depth perception? Me too. Also since August of 2015. That's when I had a craniotomy to remove half a brain tumor. I've had a constant headache, right eye blindness, no feeling, and minor paralysis on the right side of my head. But if you touch the right side of my head just the right way, even though there is no feeling to the head, it tickles my butt. IDK how it works. I had the headache first. They did a CT scan looking for the source of it and found a giant brain tumor. Unfortunately the tumor wasn't the source of the headache. A 12-hour surgery and 25 radiation treatments later I still have THD headache. My ex and I were having a huge argument in a hotel parking lot. My friend and ex's dad were there as witnesses. Two big buses pulled up, and Justin Bieber got off one of them with a security guard and walked right past us. I was crying, and my ex was yelling at me, and JB said, and I quote, "Hey, stop that." My ex yelled back at him, "White PPL shouldn't have dreads." And Justin just got onto the other bus, his guard. My friend was cracking up saying, "Was that Justin Bieber?" And sure enough, some people in his entourage, or whatever, were staying at that hotel, and he was in town that night for a concert. TLDR, Justin Bieber told my ex to stop yelling at me, and then my ex yelled at him. One of my dad's friends was in the RAF, but he got bored of it, and went to WOL, and joined the French Foreign Legion. However he got bored of that too, so he went to WOL and went back to the RAF, and took his punishment. However, this is not where the story ends. Later he and his platoon, including my dad, were going on a skiing training camp in Italy. However the route took them through France. This is the bit where he informs his platoon leader that they need to do a detour around France because he will be arrested upon entering France. Safe to say his friends were not impressed. Rumor has it that I have an almost supernatural level sense of smell. When it comes to food I would spontaneously say I smell or horse eating. Insert food name here, and I would be correct, even if the scent was barely in the air and oftentimes would be a room away. But surprise, I just really have an oversensitive olfactory organ, so much so that it's literally like a canine sense of smell. That also means any kind of really strong smell like smoke, paint fumes, perfume or powder easily overpowers me to the point of gagging. Edit. It's amazing how many people are like me. I always thought something was wrong with my sense of smell, being it so unnaturally strong, but turns out it's more common among the populace than I thought. Edit 2. For those wondering, nope, it's not debilitating to me. Nice smells don't hurt my nose, but strong chemical based or really foul smells are the ones that hit hard. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit like. If you would like to see more, feel free to subscribe.